Tonight on SUTV World News, a journalist is released from Myanmar, and the UK reflects a year later after their first country lockdown. All that and more right now. A journalist for the Associated Press has been released today from detention in Myanmar after being held there for 3 weeks. Thein Zhao was arrested on February 27th after covering the ongoing protest against the country's military coup. Zhao told news agencies he was released today and all charges would be dropped due to him doing his job at the time of his arrest. He was charged at the time with violating public order, which is a charge that oftentimes carries a 3-year imprisonment. Scott Griffin, the deputy director of the International Press Institute, said, quote, "We welcome the release of Thein Zhao, who was detained for doing his job as a journalist and should never have been behind bars in the first place." This incident continues to show the rising tensions in Myanmar as protests continue and the government stifles communications. Internet access has been restricted, journalists have been arrested, and a handful of newspapers have been barred from publishing. A growing number of Myanmar refugees, some police officers who refuse to shoot their own people, are seeking safety and shelter at India's border. Some are fleeing with the little they have on foot in the darkness of night through the jungle. CNN's Vedika Sud spoke to the refugees from Myanmar who say their lives are at risk.
Right behind me is the Mizoram-Myanmar international border. Mizoram is one of the 4 northeastern states in India that shares a border with neighboring Myanmar. Ever since the military junta took over in Myanmar, hundreds of people have been fleeing the country. CNN spoke with a 36-year-old pregnant woman who crossed into India along with a 5-year-old daughter and her husband, who she says served in the police force. Here's their story. A close call for this woman and her family. Pregnant with a second child, she crossed over from Myanmar into India's northeastern state of Mizoram along with a 5-year-old daughter and husband. We're not giving her name since she fears for her family back home. She says her husband, a police officer, refused to shoot at his own people as ordered by Myanmar's military junta. With 3 bags full of clothes, little money and the Bible, the family fled their hometown in the thick of night, undertaking an almost 200-kilometer long journey on motorbike and on foot. This border crossing between India and Myanmar has been closed for months because of the COVID-19 pandemic. However, Indian officials say more than 400 refugees desperate to flee the military junta crackdown have crossed over with the help of local activists. This man from the ethnic Chin community is one such activist. He fears being identified by security forces, so we are not giving his name. A strong network between activists and relatives of refugees on both sides of the border helps facilitate their escape, but not without risks. He says the relief refugees feel after escaping the clutches of Myanmar's military junta is short-lived. The family is given temporary shelter by a group of volunteers. She hopes to return with her daughter and unborn child to their country someday. But the escalating violence and chaos in Myanmar could make their stay as refugees in India a long one. We've spoken to two more people who crossed into India from Myanmar. They claim the military junta has ordered the police to shoot at protesters. CNN cannot independently verify these claims or the claims made by the woman or local activists. We did reach out to the Myanmar embassy for a response, but have not received any so far.
Tens of thousands have now been left homeless following a devastating fire in Rohingya refugee camp in Bangladesh on Monday. Reuters reports that Bangladesh officials have now confirmed that at least 11 people were killed in the blaze, while at least 560 others were injured. Louise Donovan, spokesperson for the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, has said that 400 people are still missing since Monday, while an estimated 45,000 people are now displaced with nowhere to go. It should be noted that most of the refugees have been in the camp since 2017, following the crackdowns against them in Myanmar. While the Muslim Bangladesh has housed the refugees for all this time, many of them fear returning to Myanmar in the event of further prosecution. Brazil on Tuesday recorded its highest daily death toll since the pandemic began. It's the first time it has posted more than 3,000 coronavirus-related deaths in a day. CNN's Matt Rivers reports from Sao Paulo.
Well, another brutal day for Brazil on Tuesday, with health officials announcing yet another single-day record had been set for the most coronavirus deaths recorded. More than 3,200 deaths recorded by officials here on Tuesday. That's the highest such figure so far, and it's the first time since this pandemic began that Brazil has recorded more than 3,000 deaths from the virus in a single day. Part of the reason that is so high is because of what is happening in the state where we are right now, the state of Sao Paulo, Brazil's largest state. Health officials here announced on Tuesday that more than 1,000 coronavirus deaths had been recorded. That's the first time since this pandemic began that they've recorded more than 1,000 deaths, and it's roughly 50% higher than the previous single-day record, which had been set last week. Meanwhile, news out of Brazil's Supreme Court, where President Jair Bolsonaro had brought a case against several state governors from across the country. These governors had put in place lockdown measures to try and stop COVID-19 from spreading as rapidly as it is right now. Bolsonaro had argued that only he had the power to put in place certain measures, but the Supreme Court basically threw out that case, ruling in favor of those governors. The Supreme Court saying, in part, quote, a totalitarian vision is not appropriate in a democracy like Brazil, and that the president is responsible for the, quote, larger leadership, the coordination of efforts aimed at the well-being of Brazilians. Matt Rivers, CNN, Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Yesterday, the UK is marking 1 year since the first COVID-19 stay-at-home order. It's a day of reflection for the tens of thousands of lives lost to this devastating pandemic. CNN's Phil Black has more.
This is a small moment in an extraordinary time. 1 day of reflection, 1 minute of silence. A desperately insufficient window for considering all that's changed and all that's been lost. But within the pandemic's grip, this is a rare collective moment to pause and remember, to try to understand how it came to this. It's 1 year since the unthinkable became the everyday. 1 year since British life, with its vibrant energy, its wealth of shared joys and experiences, was stripped back to something unrecognizable, far poorer, disconnected, lonely. A year of knowing death is all around, of relentless numbers failing to convey the glut of loss and suffering behind them. A time of grief where the rituals of grieving are twisted and stretched, the comfort of togetherness forbidden or simply beyond reach.
He's once more with his sweethearts.
Like so many essential human experiences, the sorrow of mourning is now often shared and processed through images on a screen.
You keep going, yeah?
A year of COVID-19 renewed Britain's love for its health service and those who risked their lives preventing its collapse, whose faces show the strain of long, exhausting shifts working to save others. But a long year that started with publicly celebrating their efforts on doorsteps every week has evolved into a quiet acceptance. Or worse, an expectation they will keep doing whatever is necessary regardless of the cost. Other workers, rarely considered in normal times, have also found some appreciation for their vital roles and the risks of carrying them out during a pandemic. While the virus has become another force, exposing ingrained inequalities through its disproportionate impact on people of colour. After 1 year, everyone knows the suffering imposed by the pandemic is not equal. But everyone has suffered and lost something.
Hello, my darling.
We've lost time, especially time together.
Hello.
Opportunities to celebrate and feel joy, jobs, businesses, education. Psychotherapist Julia Samuel describes them as living losses.
You feel frightened, you feel furious, you feel numb, you feel confused, you feel in denial, you feel all the different things, and you can feel them all at the same time. And yet you look out of the window and nothing's changed.
Britain's year of COVID is only one chapter in a global saga of incomprehensible change and pain that is still being written. 1 day of reflection is utterly inadequate, but it's a start. Phil Black, CNN, Essex, England.
You've got to take a look at this volcano in Iceland. After sitting dormant for 6,000 years, this volcano won't stop spewing red lava. The volcano near the capital city of Reykjavik erupted on March 19th, following weeks of increased seismic activity on the peninsula where it's located. An estimated 400 earthquakes were detected in the region last Thursday alone. The good news is officials say the overall threat level remains low. That's it for SUTV World News. I'm Adam Beam. Be sure to follow us on all our social media at SUTV News and check out our website at sutvnews.org. We're back with ship news and more on Friday, but until then, good night.